Hello, everyone. I'm Garrett Gerver. Today, for my informative speech, I really struggle with what to write about. And so I actually went to ChatGPT and I searched up what's a good prompt for informational presentation. And then I remembered I'm in computer science, so I actually know a little bit about this AI stuff. No, I didn't actually go to an AI and typed in that prompt, but I do want to talk to you guys today about how AI works behind the scenes. And this is twofold. One, I think there's a lot of environmental and ethical concerns concerning AI. And I think understanding kind of very basics of how it works kind of helps you appreciate those and maybe consider them in your day-to-day work. And then second, to demystify the technology, I think for almost every field at this point, it's going to be hugely important and it can be scary to see people kind of embracing it faster than you are and you feel like you're getting behind. And just to reassure everyone that it's a human technology, it's well documented, it's well understood, and it's not some magic, voodoo magic. That was very well worded. So first of all, I want to talk to you about how an AI takes like an English prompt, right? You type in how to do my taxes or something like that. How it understands that sentence and how it breaks it down into some more computer semantics, some computer code. So first of all, this is going to take some natural language processing, which is very fancy for it tokenizes the text. So how do I do my taxes, right? It breaks down each of those into words, right? Into separate things. It understands, okay, those are separate entities there. And then it's going to do something called self-attention. And I have an example here. I want to make sure I'm saying their name right. Um, Sorry, it's Der Nerdamont. And so Durdamont has a sentence here, time flies like an arrow. And this can be easily misunderstood because, you think of flying like literal flying like how birds do. However, obviously, flying here refers to like how time passes by really quickly. And so how an AI does this is it understands it puts weights onto each word based on part of speech. So time flies like an arrow. It understands time and arrow are nouns. Those are going to be important. And then flies is the verb that applies to time. So time flies arrow is kind of how it would break that down. And then it would understand, okay, flying in a literal sense wouldn't really make sense. So it would understand that inferred meaning for us there. And so now through those two processes, and it's a little bit more that goes behind the scenes, but that's loosely how it works. Then from there, it's mostly linear algebra, how it gets from that kind of computer code, that ones and zeros, to an actual prompt or a answer that you read back. And so I want to talk about the perceptron, which is a fun fact that the first AI, and it was actually in the 1940s. So this has been a long time coming for artificial intelligence. It isn't some radical new, brash, how did we get here technology. This has been under the works for a while now. And so how this worked is it used a visual input. It was about 20 by 20 pixels is how it read that. And then it would convert that through a process called layers, where it would, it would have that raw image and then it would convert it to, something else. It depends on, it's kind of a little arbitrary, but you end up training an AI, and we'll get to this in a minute, on what works the best. So it's a little arbitrary, but it makes connections to try to deduce like, oh, that's an X or that's a zero. And so it starts to kind of form pieces together. Here I want to use a image by Jay Almar in an article I read from him. If I can share my screen. I mean, it's simply just a like the iPhone message, right? The recommended words, thou shall, and it comes up with not, right? This is an example of an LLM because it takes in that raw input, right? Thou shalt, right? Like your query or your question to the LLM or large language model, another word for these AI like ChatGPT and so on. But these AI take this raw input and then they're deducing what would be the next word there. And so thou shalt, you get not there. Sorry, I guess someone's at my door. I'm going to finish real quick. And then lastly, so now we kind of understand that's the process that we get from it's able to kind of predict those next words through those layers, and then it's able to pick the what it thinks is the highest probability to go in there. But also there's different training data that can be used, like why ChatGPT might be better at one thing, where Gemini or Goth might be better at another thing. It's just because it's been used, it has different training data that it used to make it understand the kind of those correlations, right? Like if it uses academic journals, it's going to get something very different than if you use Reddit. And so now that we understand that, I want to really quickly go over the environmental concerns. First of all, this is very computationally heavy, right? So it's using a lot of resources to cool down these computers. It's going to use a lot of water to cool these down. And so this is wasting a lot of natural resources. So if you think you can get away with using something like a normal Google search, then this is going to be better for your query or for your search. And then also for getting this data, for example, ChatGPT, they use they kind of void a lot of copyright notices to get this data. And so this obviously not good. There's a lot of ethical implications to that. And so you might want to look into what model you're using in deciding, do I want to support that business model? Well, now that we understand a little bit more about AI and how it works, hopefully it demystifies that and have an appreciation for the ethics involved. We're all trying to figure out the next step in our careers, and AI is simply going to play a part in that. And hopefully understanding this makes you feel a little more at ease about antiquating it into your workflow. Thank you.